Strack.
Here.
Weedman.
Here.
Mack.
Here.
LaCroy.
Here.
Meskel.
Here. That's a quorum. Let's present the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Could I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda? Second. Are there any questions? Okay.
Meskel.
Aye.
Strack.
Aye.
Mack.
Aye.
Weedman.
Aye.
LaCroy.
Aye. Motion carries. Public comments?
Right here.
Jessica, Albert? If you could use a microphone.
There we go. Okay. Hi, I'm Jessica Albert, and I noticed that you have initiated a search for another school district nurse, and I just wanted to say thank you and stress that as a citizen of this community, I think it's really important, and I know it's kind of a pipe dream, but it'd be awesome if we could have a nurse in every building. I feel like it's a burden on our staff, our teachers, our principals, our other staff to have medical expertise for diabetes, food allergies, a number of other ailments that our students are afflicted with. So, but thank you. I just wanted to say that. Thanks.
Thank you. I will say that it's a step in that direction. So the state actually, if I remember right, in the funding model, the ideal number is higher than what we'll have even after hiring another one. So the intent would be to keep moving forward in that direction for all those points in the model, but that's one of them. So we would hope to hopefully add in the future as well. But we'll see how things go. Thank you. Park presentation. Probably yes.
So Amanda and I are very happy that we are both here tonight to be able to share some assessment results with you. We are both very, very happy to give more details or answer questions along the way. But we also knew that we were going to bombard you with a lot of data. And so we're going to try to condense it the best way that we can in order for you to have a big picture, knowing that this is just really the tip of all the information that we get about this assessments. And I was just looking at the title page here. We have a lot of acronyms. So we have a whole lot of letters up there. So we're going to be talking about the PARC assessment, Partnership for the Assessment of the Readiness of College and Career, ISA, Illinois Science Assessment, and MAP, Measure of Academic Progress. So we have a lot of acronyms that we're going to be discussing. And they've all come just recently, so that's why we've grouped them all together at this moment to talk through. So we're starting with PARC, again, the Partnership for the Assessment of Readiness of College and Career. Officially, the results that we're going to show you are the last results of the PARCC test. So we are going to be having a new state assessment this school year. But I wanted to just share a little bit. Obviously, you've known that it was for students in grades 3 through 8, and our window was March 12th to April 20th. For the middle school 5-8 and April 2 to 20 for for grades 3 and 4. And then we also have a number of students, a small number, and Heather, I'm not putting you on the spot, but we do have a small number of students whose IEP team have decided that it would be more appropriate to take the test, which also has another acronym, DLMAA. And so Dynamic Learning Maps Alternate Assessment. And those are for students who it really doesn't make sense to take the PARC assessment. It's more of a portfolio experience. I'm looking at you in case I'm missing something. Yeah. But it's just a way to gather data about how those students are progressing. So it's really for a very small population of our students. So I hope that makes sense. So I did say that it was the last year. And so that complicates things because all the information that we've been gathering, and I heard you earlier tonight say the test continues to change. And so what we've been told is that the test questions are going to remain the same. Our reporting features are supposed to remain constant, but we do have a new provider and we have a new name. And so I'm excited about what the goals for the new Illinois Assessment of Readiness. That's the current name, and I think it's probably going to stick, but the name has gone through a few morphs in the last few months. So IAR is going to be the new one, so we have some new alphabet letters to learn, IAR. So the state superintendent has shared with us that they want the goals for this new assessment is that we're going to get the results much more quickly. They have suggested their goal over time is within 30 days of administration. That would be amazing and great, and it would mean actually in the same school year that the kids take the test that we'd actually have data, and that same group of teachers who are working with those students would have data that they could use at the end of that school, for part of that school year. I love that goal. I'm waiting to see. They also are saying that they're going to build the assessments from the ground up in more languages to increase accessibility. So right now there is a Spanish version of math only, but they are hoping to add a number of the other predominantly large language groups for the state of Illinois into the assessment. So I'm happy about that. I'm going to wait and see. It is what they're telling us is that this new assessment is going to utilize the same test items from the current PARC assessment into the new state assessment called IAR. The one really helpful thing that I'm looking forward to is that the results are going to be scored on a common scale. So one of the challenges that we have in the assessment results that you're going to see is that every year the cut score for proficiency fluctuates. So one year the score might be a 250 to show proficiency. The next year it might be a 238 to show proficiency. The next year it's a 303. And so that makes it very difficult to compare results over time. Is that making sense to you?
Does it fluctuate because are they trying to say that X percent are proficient and that X percent is a different number each year, or why is it?
That would be a reasonable person's response to that. I'm not going to answer that question because I don't know for sure, but there has been a lot of manipulation of the cut scores to get the results that they're looking for. Are you getting what I'm trying to not say?
Yes.
There you go. So I'd be very excited about that because one of the things that our board has looked at and has asked in the past is how can we compare a group of students as they go through the state assessment? How many kids have shown proficiency over time? Right now in your packet that we provided you, we did put cohort information, and so the challenge with that is that one year we might have a few more kids in the proficient range because the cut score was different, and then the next year we might have more kids in the not proficient because the cut score is different. So I'm loving the idea for us to move to a common scale. So I'm going to hold off and wait, but I'm very hopeful for that one. I think it will be a great thing. Reaching full online assessment to support equity of access to rigorous instruction and return results faster. You may know that when PARC started, they had offered a paper version of the assessment. There is not a paper version available anymore, so they are going to online. One of the challenges that they found out when they did a deep dive into the state assessment data, that the schools that did the paper version scored better than the kids who took the test on the online version. Statistically different, they scored better. Then you don't know if it's a technology issue or if it's a knowledge issue or such. So I'm anxious that we're all going to have the same thing. And then the last one, that makes perfect sense to me, transitioning to a computer adaptive format, which our MAP test that we're going to be talking about a little bit later are a computer adaptive test. What that means is if a student gets questions correct, the computer is able to make the questions a little bit harder to see a full potential of the student. If the student gets some of the questions wrong in succession, they actually make the questions a little bit easier, and the end outcome is actually to find out where the kid actually ends up. That's what our MAP test does. The good thing about that is that there really isn't a perfect score then, because there's always more and a higher score that the student can get. Does that make sense to everybody? So I'm excited that those were the opportunities for the new assessment. So I'm excited about that. So this is, I put this in here because this is the kind of information that we are currently getting about the new Illinois Assessment of Readiness. As of the other day when we put this in, for when are we giving the tests? Well, on the state website, this is a direct quote. It says, dates are presently unknown, subject to ongoing procurement, and will be added as soon as they are available. Dates will absolutely not start before March 4th and will most likely not extend past April 26th. That makes planning a little bit of a challenge when we get that kind of information. And I will also share that we have a new company who will be administering the test. It's called DRC, Data Recognition Corporation. And their goal is to maintain comparability to previous year's results and then build on the foundation of the PARC content. I will share that we have experience using DRC as a testing format, and our access testing that we give to all of our second language learners has been, they've been using DRC. We did experience some pretty significant issues with the technology in the access testing last year. So Amanda and I are both being very hopeful that it is going to be a positive experience for us as we go much larger and bigger across the strait with the company. They're assuring us that they know the expectations.
They know the expectations of the state and plan on fulfilling what the expectations are. There is a little bit of nervous energy around it, always being a new provider. I got to sit on a webinar just earlier this week, and the state has actually received a formal protest to DRC being the vendor. And so because of that, the state can no longer release any information to the school districts as far as what's going to be happening with the assessment until the protest has been resolved. When we asked how long that typically takes, they said several months to we don't know. So we are going to maintain hope that it's going to be quick and that we'll get some new information so we can begin our planning and preparation as soon as we can.
We're not trying to be down on the system, but we're just being honest about what we're dealing with at the moment. So we're going to keep going. We're going to start talking about the 2018 PARC data overview. And what we did is in your packet, we provided a lot of supplemental graphs and charts, not graphs, lots of charts with some of the data if you wanted to look at those. So one of the things that we did is we looked for every grade level. And so we did some color coding. And so this color coding for me is just a good visual way to represent it. So you can see that across the top we have the third grade from 2015, the third grade from 16, the third grade from 17, the third grade from 18. This is not the same group of students, new group of students every year. And across the left-hand side, you'll see that we have the cross-state. Cross-state means it's the average of all the states that have continued to take PARC. When we first started taking PARC, there was a majority of the states were using PARC, and now we've dwindled down to a very small number. That was one of the reasons that Illinois chose to stop also taking PARC because of costs related to it. So cross-state, our state, the district, and then each of the schools along the way. So you may wonder about my color coding. And so the color coding is if it was an increase of 2 or more points, I made it green. If it was within 1 point either way, from last year's, it was yellow. And if it was less, it went down 2 points or more, it was red. Does that make sense about my color coding? I just thought it was helpful to have a review of it. Remember, different group of students each time. Obviously, the 4th grade was very exciting to see significant green. It doesn't mean that we're satisfied with those numbers. Again, this is it for ELA and literacy. The percentages that we have there identified are the students who met or exceeded. Those are the top 2 categories of the data that we get.
Are we able to do, I guess, cohort analysis? Are we able to see how?
The same group of students is actually in the packet that we presented. So I put the 3rd graders from 2015, the 4th graders from 2016, the 5th graders in I'm going to get my years correct. So there's some charts that actually trace the same students to see. The difficulty, as I shared earlier with looking at the same group of students, is that the cut scores changed every year. So when we're able to move to a consistent cut score, that will help us be able to look at that. We're talking apples to apples for cut scores for what it takes to be proficient in each level. Okay, we're going to keep going. One of the things that we did is we just wanted to make it into a visual. And so you can see there's 4 bands, and each one of those, the first one is cross-state, state, district, Avon, Meadowview, Park. You see the pattern across the bottom. And then the 4 colors across are the 4 previous years. And so it's just a visual way of seeing it. This often helps teachers when we share them in buildings or in our job-alike groups to see it visually, because the picture does tell a lot of words. Same idea with 4th grade. Remember that previous chart was 3rd and 4th grade, so this is the visual for 3rd and 4th grade. Continuing on with 5th grade. So same kind of chart. This makes us a little bit concerned, an area of things that we need to continue to work on, that we are not seeing any green. This is the fact, so we can't hide it. This is the reality of where we're going with this. We have to be consciously working on all of this. We are seeing significant difference instructionally in the work that we've been doing. Remember, this assessment was taken right before, right after spring break of last school year. Continuing the same thing with the pattern. Remember, different students each of those years too, along the way. So 5th and 6th grade as we're showing. And then the last charts are all about 7th and 8th grade. Again, this is about ELA. We know that we have work to do. We know that the teams will be analyzing this data. We actually, and I'm going to steal some of Amanda's thunder because she's going to be talking about math, but we already have some action plans in place, so I'll wait until she talks about math to share that. The next slides, again, are the same visuals for 7th and 8th grade along the way about what the ELA performance was. Questions so far about the format of how we're looking at this information?
Which slides have the cohort versus?
It was in the additional packet, the handout.
Oh, okay.
The handouts that I'm looking at you, Sue. So the
The folder I shared with you.
I just looked
Okay,
I don't know. I'm sorry.
I have a set of handouts, so we'll make sure these.
That was just my additional question. Let's move on.
So there you go. So we'll get these at, sorry, Sue.
No, that's all right.
We have some additional packet handout for us to go through all those things. That would be great.
So then moving on to math, kind of the same chunks. We chunked our 3rd and 4th grade together. Again, very excited to see a lot of green for 4th grade. But again, knowing that when we see that red, we still have some work to do. I will be very interested to see how the students do this year, especially at K4 Math last year. We did, at the end of the year, we realized that our order wasn't necessarily that we were teaching things in, wasn't working for us. So we rearranged some things in hopes of having a better flow and kind of working through some of the issues that we had last year. So I'll be excited to see this year's data.
I realize that my coloring had an error there under Park East for 4th grade. That should be yellow. The 53 should be yellow and not red. So that was my mistake.
So then just our visuals, again, same thing. We have our cross-state, state, district, and all of our 3rd grade students from 2015 to 2018 and how they scored, remembering that they are different groups of kiddos that kind of passed through. And same visual for 4th grade. And then when we move on to 5th and 6th grade math, 5th grade again is a nice area of celebration. We were happy to see all of that green there. And then knowing that we do have some work to do still in 6th grade when we looked at our data.
This information has been pretty telling for the Frederick School specifically. Looking at the 5th grade data to make sure that we're talking about the kids coming into Frederick and that they were performing. And so now they've really looked at what they're doing once they get to Frederick to see if they can maintain that higher expectation. So this has led to some pretty intense conversations in the buildings.
And then our graphics for 5th grade and for 6th grade.
Is the state on a different scale?
On a different scale?
Yeah. Why?
No, that's the percent proficient from 2015 to 2018, same scale. If we're looking at, if I'm going back here, the state in 2015 for 5th grade and 6th grade, only 27% of students met or exceeded proficiency targets in that year. And then it's only increased, well, from 2015 to 2018 for 6th grade, it didn't really increase. It's back down to 27. And then for 5th grade, the state only rose a few percentage points. And then a nice celebration with 7th grade. We see a lot of green there. So again, Paul just mentioned the transition of students once they left our elementary schools into Frederick. And then, so that has also been a focus once the students transitioned from Frederick to GMS. And then how do we, again, maintain that high level of expectation for student achievement in 8th grade?
So what I was going to share about a celebration, the day that all of these results came and Amanda was working hard on it, I actually had a release with 7th grade. And so I had her print out the sheets and I brought them right over to 7th grade. And so we did a fast analysis right then and there. They were very interested to see the issue. And they give us some interesting reports about the type of questions that they're asking, what target or what standard it's related to, what's the rigor or the how hard the question is. And so we did identify an area, it was called reasoning and modeling, was an area that we weren't so happy with the results. And so, interestingly, tomorrow we have arranged for the math specialist from the Regional Office of Education. She's coming to work specifically with the 7th grade team to do a presentation about going back to what does reasoning and modeling mean, and then how does it look like in the 7th grade classroom, what we can do, how we can add that into their instruction for the rest of this school year. So I was very excited that we had a pretty immediate action plan to be able to find an area. And really the teacher said, I'm not sure I completely understand this area. The team was honest and showing reality about what they needed some help with. And so when I offered our person from the ROE to come. They said, yes, yes, please. And so they'll be presenting to our math coaches, math specialists, some of us who are able to get there tomorrow, so that we can influence the instruction in all the classrooms. So I think that's really a positive step, quick action.
Very exciting. And then again, just our graphics for 7th grade and 8th grade. So now we're going to kind of move on to the subgroup information. You have some charts in your handouts regarding the exact percentages of the students who met or exceeded for Park for the subgroup information.
Wow. So this chart is a little complex to look at. That's why I moved up here. So Amanda might do some of the talking and I'll do some of the talking. What we did is we took all of the different tests along the bottom. So it goes ELA math, ELA math, ELA math all the way across from 3rd through 8th grade. It does then have the overall district average of what we were having for each of those categories. Is this making sense so far? Then we did a double stack here on this. So we added all of these lines. So the blue line in here, this was the state. I apologize, I said that wrong. This is the state average. The blue line is where the district fell as the average. Making sense so far? And then we move into whatever color we would like that to be. Amanda, I'll let you pick the color that you would say that is.
Pinkish, purplish?
Fuchsia.
Fuchsia?
Fuchsia-ish.
Fuchsia-ish?
That one is females. And then the green one is males, and then again the orange is the state. We wanted to be able to look at the subgroups to see any of the differences. And so I don't know if you see a pattern or a trend, but interestingly in 3rd grade, the females started a little bit stronger, then the males went a little bit stronger, then it was reversed, and then it ended up that the females were higher in many of them. Differences between ELA and math, but we do want to look at them as well. So just a little bit of a question about gender.
So now we're going to add some more colors in.
This one complicates things.
Just slightly. So the blue bars across the bottom, again, are the state. And then the blue line is where the district scored for each of those areas, 3rd grade ELA, 3rd grade math, et cetera, et cetera. So then these are our ethnic groups. So I think the first one there, that's our fuchsia color. I'm going to look at Paul to maybe help identify where that line is. And that's our Hispanic and Latino students. Our green is our American Indian or Alaskan Native students.
You'll notice that there's some that go all the way down to 0 because we didn't have any students in those, we didn't have enough students in those subgroups, so it doesn't report anything for that subgroup.
So it doesn't mean they didn't achieve, it just means there weren't enough students in that subgroup to report out on. The orange color is our Asian population of students. Is this pinkish?
So this is the lighter one.
Lighter pink?
I may have said that wrong the last time.
Are our African American students. And then moving on, in some grade levels we had some Hawaiian Pacific Islander students. Is that teal color? Green are our white students. Another reddish pink colors, 2 or more races. So you can see kind of where our ethnic subgroups were scoring. You can see that there's some great spikes for our students who are American Indian or Alaskan Natives. They had some good achievement.
There were only a few of them. So they did very well.
They did very well.
There were only a few.
Yes. So it just puts a different lens onto some of our data analysis and working with our different student populations and where we need to focus more time, more resources, more energy. And then, so I think we have a couple more of these. So now we're going to move on to our students that were either yes, had an IEP, no, did not have an IEP, or had a 504. So these are our pupil services, our special ed students, and kind of where they scored. So same concept applies. The bars are where the state scored. The blue line is where the district scored. And then, what color is this, Paul? Magenta. Thank you, Barbara. Magenta is the students that had an IEP, where how they scored for the park assessment. Green is the students who did not have an IEP. And the pink are the students who have 504s.
So this is something that the special ed department will be very interested in pursuing. Obviously, it's all the information that we have. Remember that a 504 can be for academics, but it can also be for other issues or other opportunities for the students. So it doesn't always mean that there's an academic issue associated with a student with a 504. It just means that they have a 504 plan. That might be for medical reasons. Wendy, I'm looking at you because I know this is your world. Might be for a medical reason. It might be for a temporary situation during the testing with a broken arm or leg or something like that. But it can also, anything that influences the major life activities.
And our final chart is our English language learners and how they scored, our migrant students, and our economically disadvantaged, which is our free and reduced population. So again, you see this kind of pink color kind of flatlined here at the bottom. It's again because we did not have enough students in that subgroup to generate a subgroup score. So again, it doesn't mean that they're not achieving. It just means that we didn't have enough students for these particular grade levels that could generate a subgroup score.
In the packet that we will make sure that you have, that didn't get put in the board packet, you now have, thank you.
You now have,
There's
yes.
charts that give all the actual numbers with all of these associated as well.
Can I make one suggestion, please?
Yes?
Can you make these type of charts?
Yes?
Put math all on one and put ELA all on the other, because then you'll be comparing math and ELA together. So you won't have a big.
Thank you for the suggestion. We're glad to do that.
All right, so what are our next steps? I'm gonna let Paul.
So what are our next steps with all that data? It is data we need to review at each of the buildings. We'll be analyzing it in their own right, and they'll be comparing it to the district and the state is the way the buildings operate. But then the job likes will also have an opportunity. So job like means all the people who work with math, all the people who work with ELA will have an opportunity, and they'll get the full data spectrum. They'll be able to review across. The whole goal for that is for them to collectively identify areas that we may need to do. Like Amanda said, sometimes it does encourage us to change the order or the priorities that we pick for the subject. It may want us to talk to one school to see what they're doing differently, to see if we can emulate those same practices in each of our other ones. So those are all the things that we're talking about. The important one is all that subgroup information, because as you know from the new ESSA plan, we have to really dive into each of those subgroups and come up with a plan for adequate progress for each of those groups. So those will be very, very important to look at it. We also want to look to see if we have other data sources. And so one of the things that we're very excited about, we had our first training with our new program called ION, and we had representatives from every school come, and that's going to be our tool that we're going to be able to move data around and pull a group of students and compare data sources so that we'll be able to triangulate. And then in the coming couple weeks, we're also going to be putting some of our actual District 46 data into ION. We're going small for cycle 2, which is finishing soon as part of trimester 1. But we're going to try that, and then we'll be rolling out in trimester 2 many more data points into ION from our local data. So it will be interesting because the amazing thing about ION is that we're going to be able to take the strands out of PARC. Strands, by that I mean, in math, for example, a strand is geometry. Another one is data and measurement. Another one is operations and algebraic thinking. We'll be able to take the data from PARC. We'll be able to take similar data from our MAP results. And then we'll also be able to connect our district and local assessment data for each of those strands as well. So it is something that we're really on the verge of being able to do some good things with organizing data across multiple sources. So that's really good. And the schools obviously need this data because it's a requirement of the ESSA plan, the ESSA School Improvement Plan, if you want to call it that, to look at the subgroups, look at your current data, look at to see where you're needing to be. Remember, the goal for ESSA by 2032 is for all students to be at 90% or more meet or exceed. Oh boy. That was fun.
Okay.
So that's part of the goal, is to get all of those subgroups over the next many years to 2023. Is that what I just said? 32. 2032 to get to 90% meet or exceed.
When you say you're going to triangulate our district data, what is what is not standardized that is being used?
Currently, the only thing that won't be standardized that goes through a process is our cycle assessment in data, in the district. The other one is PARC, the other one is MAP. So those both have measures of standard process.
All right, so we are going to move on to the Illinois Science Assessment, or ISA. So Illinois Science Assessment is something we have to do for compliance with federal and state regulations. All students in grades 5 and 8, and then once at the high school level, have to take a science assessment. So for the past 3 years, this school year will be our 4th year, we've had to take the Illinois Science Assessment. And that happens kind of during our park window. This year and last year, our window is just the beginning of March. It's 1 day, 1 hour for each grade level. They're in, they're out, they're done. And the Illinois Science Assessment has been a little bit of a roller coaster ride for us. The very first year that we did it, we didn't receive the results until 2 years later, which doesn't necessarily help us or our teachers or our students or give us any actionable data. The second year we took it, we got the results maybe a year and a half later. So it was an improvement. We were excited, but still not great as far as actionable data. Last year, after we took it, we got the results this fall, which is the fastest they've ever gotten to us. So we were very excited to see that improvement. So
parents will be seeing those results. We're sending home the PARC results. We're sending home the Illinois Science Assessment results for the kids in those grades. And then the MAP results in their report cards coming out in about a month.
In about a month, yes.
Month.
Amazing how time flies. So to kind of share with you the Illinois Science Assessment data, we have grade 5 in this chart here and grade 8. Again, knowing that these are not the same cohort of kids, these are different groups of kids, I kind of stuck with Paul's color coding method. So within about 1 is yellow, 2 or more is green, and 2 or more improvement, and 2 or more decrease is red. And then the areas where we did not have a subgroup, I was not able to color code because there was no improvement or decrease.
So like that bottom one shouldn't be a big shock that we went from 100% to 0%. It's because we didn't have any students.
Yes.
But they reported it as 0.
So overall, happy that we are seeing some green, a lot of green, but again, knowing that we have some areas to work in. And the science assessment is a little bit different. It's not your standardized multiple choice question test. The students are kind of given experiences within the test. It's completely online. They'll be given kind of some simulations and asked to make some predictions and kind of go through the scientific process with those simulations.
I was really excited to see this number. That's great. I'd like to see that number in all of these columns, but for our girls to get to a 90.2, I'm really happy about that.
That's really exciting. And so then we just put it in a little bit of a visual for you. Across the bottom, we have how the state performed, how the district performed, and then how each of the schools performed for each of the years that we have taken the science assessment. And I should say, I forgot to say, on science assessment, there's only 2 scores. You are either proficient or you are not proficient. There is no meets or exceeds or nearly met. You're either A or B, 1 or 2. You either made it or you didn't.
And unfortunately, that's about the data that we get.
Yes.
We don't get strands, we don't get specific details, we don't get question
Yeah.
types. We really get, it's a very fast
Yeah.
experience to get that kind of result.
So we can't really drill down into certain areas of our science instruction where we could make improvements or where we're doing exceptionally well. It's just kind of science as a whole. It is aligned to the next generation science standards, which are the standards that Illinois has adopted as their own. Hopefully, maybe in the future, they'll consider expanding the types of reports that we get for science. But for the moment, we're going to work with what we got.
Did you say the science test is the kids take online?
It's completely done on the computer. Just like the park assessment, it's one test session completely done on the computer.
My question is there a way for students to just have to get used to that way of taking a test before they take the test?
We take a lot of our assessments online. Our MAP test is completely done online. Again, our park test, this test. So students are very familiar with it. And before, there is no practice test for the science assessment, but there's always things for them to do on the computer to kind of get used to the types of questions that they'll see. Drag and drop, typing in a certain kind of text box, kind of connecting different features to each other. So we always make sure that at least once a year the kiddos get some practice with the types of questions they'll see on online
Teachers give
assessments.
an awful lot of online quizzes as well. So they use lots of different tools for kids to be able to respond digitally, either for homework or for quizzes or experiences. Some of the websites that we have access for. I know that with increased technology availability, I'll just put it that way, we'll have even more opportunities for kids to be able to have regular practice on the computer to answer questions and to do things more digitally.
Okay, once the kids take the science test, are those items released then? Or can they, they go to, is it possible that I might exactly the same item the next year? Okay.
Very
I think that's why
possible.
they're not releasing them, is
Yes.
that the state of Illinois actually bought the assessment from Washington, D.C. From their state assessment, and they just bought all the questions, and that's the test that we give. So that's where that came from.
Well, you would hope that your instruction is such that
It's connected to
It's
next
connected,
generation
yes.
science.
you're not teaching to a test.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
Right. The difficulty is that it is definitely not hands-on, it's not inquiry-based, they're actually answering questions. There are some simulation kind
Type
of
things.
things, but it's pretty minimal.
We didn't get into a real good argument on this one, but this business of teaching to a test, I've thought about for a long, long time. And if your test is really matched up with your instruction, you're always teaching to a test.
Well,
Think-
and I
think
would
about
say,
that.
I would say if your instruction is aligned to the targets or the standards,
Standards.
and then the test is also based on the standards or the
Yeah.
targets, then you are getting double work out of it. You know, that makes sense. If you're instructing on things that are non-related to anything,
Right.
then it's really a big waste of instructional time.
No, I'm not saying that you're teaching to item 5 on page 19.
Correct.
I'm not
No.
saying that at all.
Right.
Okay.
There are some things on Park, though, that we know that kids have to experience. For example, on Park, and we're assuming in the new Illinois assessment, that there's something like it's called a two-part question. So they have to answer the first part, and then they have to prove it in the second part. I think it's appropriate for kids to see those kind of questions during their regular instruction, so it's not the first time they've been expected to do something like that. If that's the first time they've ever seen it, they're going to be confused about the test style and not the knowledge that they need to possess.
I was just going to say, you need to reach higher order thinking skills, and often these tests only get to the lower level skills. Park is supposed to do better.
very difficult to get to a DOK level of
With
3 or
science,
4
Yeah.
in a paper, pencil, or computer multiple choice, because they say those don't match.
The tests are very limited in what they can show what our kids know. So it's really important that the teachers are also keeping their own inventories and learning from each other across schools. I mean, the work that we're doing, but it worries me if this is what's driving the work. I hope we're not taking this and
This is important to look at,
It's
but then we
important
need
to look at, but I can tell you,
the other-
because of the lag that we've gotten in previous years to get specifically the science assessment data back, it hasn't really, it's been a, here's the data, let's spend a few moments talking about it, but it hasn't been anything that we've been able to use.
Well, especially the first year or two.
Instructionally.
Because the 8th graders who took it were juniors by the time we got the results back. That's really not going to help us instructionally, because those are 3 years is light years away
Yeah.
instructionally. And what you were just saying, Kathleen, is exactly the whole concept for the DLM, is not necessarily a rote test that they have to follow. It's a portfolio, it's a use of a rubric, it's using samples of their work, it's observational. That's exactly what the DLM does. It's very time intensive because there's a whole mandate of everything they have to evaluate, and there's a training that goes through. But that is exactly the philosophy of the DLM.
Right, and that's the analysis work that I do, that I will impart to you. We just did our admissions process using that
Something
type
like
of
that.
analysis, but it really is getting at more criterion-based. So you're hitting the standards and you're hitting them at higher levels. This is just a FYI, litmus test. How are you doing?
Right. So, we've had a lot of assessment data, but we're going to keep going with the MAP data. So MAP stands for Measure of Academic Progress. We're just going to go through this. You've heard this before. Just some of the changes that we've done is that this year we have had first graders take both the math and reading. We'll be doing that 3 times this year for 1st through 8th grade. Starting in February, it will be our first time that we actually have our kindergarten students participate. We are finding that kindergarten kids are coming in much more technologically advanced than what they may have been 5 or 6 or 7 years ago. Interestingly, we're going to have to meet them where they are, because one of the challenges with testing in MAP is that kids currently need to use a mouse, and most kindergarten kids are very techie, and they don't usually ever use a mouse. And so we're going to be, they do want to touch the screen, they want to push things around. So in the coming months, before we get to February, we're going to have opportunities for kids to play some games and to do some related schoolwork on the computer to learn how to use the mouse. We found that that's going to be the biggest issue with kids taking the kindergarten MAP assessment. We also may notice on there that we don't have the 8th graders take the test in spring, generally. If you've had an 8th grader in spring, that is not necessarily their most productive, engaged time of their school career. If there's any 8th graders in the room, please, I'm not giving you permission to do anything. I said generally we don't have 8th graders take it. We do have a number of 8th graders who actually ask to take the spring MAP test, because our high school system is happy to gather any additional data points if a student is interested in changing or challenging their placement at the high school, that they're happy to take a spring MAP score if there was a change. So we allow kids to do that. We're glad to help them with that if that will improve their placement at the high school. So if it's a good data piece. We have made some decisions though, and the feedback so far has been very positive. You see it where it says new. For our English learners, we have decided that a student who screens at a 1 to a 2.5, that means that they are very limited in English, really shouldn't have to take the MAP test. We don't think that they have enough English to put value into that experience. Does that make sense to everybody? Mm-hmm. And so that the EL staff was very, very happy about that, because kids often struggled to complete it and were upset and felt like they weren't able to do it. I actually heard a story this year of one of our students who was concerned that they were taking the MAP test. And it was a student who just came here from another country. And they said, I know a lot of the rivers and the mountains and the hills in my country, but I don't know anything of the rivers and mountains in the United States. Think about that. Mm-hmm. The student thought it was going to be a map test, not that it meant measures of academic progress. And we told the student that they weren't going to have to take the test yet, and so they were happy about that. And then we also are really considering the text-to-speech for students who score 2.5 to 4.0, because we would really like to know how much they actually know, instead of having to struggle through all the English. So those are changes that we've done that we think are positive. Unfortunately, those are not the same criteria for the state assessment. So the kids will have to take the state assessment, except they've just announced just recently that a student who's here less than a year is still going to be asked to take the test, but their scores aren't going to be included in the district or the building composite. So it's going to be an experience for them, but their scores won't be counted. I'm happy that that's at least a step in the right direction. This is a chart that we get right from MAP. And we thought this was the best visual that we could give you with all the information. Again, in the packet that you have, we gave you more specifics. That blue box is what the observed growth should be. I'm going to say that wrong.
The blue box is what we actually observed, yes, growth from students that we had last year at the same time to the same students this year. So this year's second grade, how they grew from first grade to second grade. The orange diamond is where we would hope they would be scoring, and we want the blue box to kind of meet in the middle of that diamond. That's
we would
what
really
we would
like the
to
blue
see.
box to be totally encompassing, to go past the orange.
Yes.
So that you can see the top part is math, the bottom part is reading. And again, this is fall to fall. We're able to do fall to spring. We're able to do
fall to winter, spring to spring, winter to winter.
Fall at the moment. So this gives the teachers a baseline information where they are. The teachers also get a report specific to all the domains, like I was sharing before. So this is just one of the graphs that we get with MAP.
So then with all of the MAP data that we've gathered, and you do have some more in your packets, we kind of identified quickly some areas of strength, some areas of potential growth, and just some notes that we observed. Interestingly, the note that we observed is boys, for the most part, for the fall MAP, scored just a few RIP points higher than the girls for math, and it flip-flopped for reading. Girls scored traditionally a few RIP points higher in reading than boys did, and it was really just by 2 or 3 RIP points for each grade level. And Paul this afternoon reminded me that a couple RIP points isn't very statistically significant, so we're happy to see that that gap between our male and female students is closing. But some areas of strength and areas of celebration. Our EL population for first, second, and third grade, they showed significant growth from last fall to this fall. They showed significant achievement in this fall. So that was a huge celebration. We also have a number of students in 5th grade who currently take 6th grade math. So we feel that it's only appropriate for them to take the 6th through 8th grade version of the MAP test for math, and they also scored very well. So some great areas of celebration, but we really want to focus on our areas of potential growth where we need to focus some of our work. We noticed that African American students are scoring lower than the district norm in reading and math for fall, and that's pretty consistent throughout the grade levels, so that's an area that we want to work on up. Scored lower than our district average, so I know that those are areas that Heather and Wendy will focus on and that Stephanie will focus on, and each of our buildings will take some time in. And then kind of when we're looking at specific strands, there were some areas that we felt we could make some improvements in. So for example, for 1st through 4th grade, informational text was an area that we can definitely work on and improve in. For grades 1 through 3, number and operations and measurement and data are also strands that we can work on with those students. And finally, operations and algebraic thinking and statistics and probability are the greatest areas of growth that we should be working on for grades 6 through 8.
So the challenge right there is statistics and probability is often a unit at the end of the year. After they've learned all of the things to get to the statistics and probability, so we're gonna have to look at that very, very closely to see where we should be influencing that, if we decide we need to.
So, how does this tie, I guess, how does it correlate with the other assessments that are given in the district, the psychometric assessments, and the park?
So that's one of the things that we're excited that Ian's gonna help us to do that. We have not had the ability to, we haven't collected our cycle assessment data yet, so this is the first time that we're trying it in cycle 2. Right now, we're gonna be collecting that for the first time and putting it into a system. The teachers, each team have been collecting that data and organizing. We haven't done it at the district level yet, so that's coming right now. So then we're gonna be able to make the connection. We can put those map scores and we can pull those same students to see how they did on our district assessments, which will be very helpful.
So these are the strands that Common Core is written. So when you read like the reading standards, for example, informational text, we have our literature and informational text standards, and there are specific standards that correlate to language, craft, and structure for both literature and informational text. So we have identified our priority standards in that area for each grade level, and so then we'll kind of look at the cycle assessments that are assessing those compared to MAP, compared to PARC, so we can kind of see the continuity amongst those strands.
How much of the individual teachers is playing? Because it sounds like even the cycle assessments are standardized across the district, so.
They are standardized.
Right, so they're all standardized, so at what point can a teacher really, I mean, there's performance, there's other things that are observed in a student. How do we, I guess, incorporate that into the decision-making process?
So those are the kind of things that they talk about the problem-solving team. So when they have a data meeting, they look at the park, they'll look at the park data, they'll look at the map data, they'll look at any of the other sources of data, but then the teacher also brings all their information about what's happening in the classroom. We want to have weight on that. To me, that's sometimes more important than all the other ones. Right.
And this number's here on this test, and the same strand and the same standard is here, and because I have what that's what you're gonna end up seeing.
Some scatter,
So
probably.
it's really the qualitative story that is important.
So I agree.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
Is there a report like that for each building, or is that just, that's the general?
This is what Amanda and I put together. Amanda did actually most of this. We actually put this together, but this is what the building teams can do too. They can find, they will find what their areas of strength. We don't have that to share with you, but those are things that the building teams would be discussing and working on. Whew.
We made it.
We've been asking questions along the way, which is great, but we wanted to at least give you a snapshot that we have a lot of data. One of the things that I'm always cautious of in literature, it talks about suffering from DRIP. DRIP stands for data rich, information poor. And so I think we have to be careful. We don't want to just have mounds and mounds of data that we just stack up. If we're not doing something with it, it's really useless and it's a waste of our kids' time. So that's why we want to look at some of these results on a regular basis and get it to the teacher level. Because me looking at it doesn't have as much impact as a third grade team in a specific building looking with a specific group of students. That's just an example.
How is that, sorry, how is that information making it back to you? I guess that was my question. So the qualitative on the ground information, how is that making its way back up to you? Because there might be team meetings at the building level, but then across buildings, you're
So
I'm getting
the
that.
elementary principals, for example, meet on a fairly regular basis, and so they will discuss it. I think it's an area that we need to beef up, I'm being honest about that, but it is something they discuss. We are finding trends. When we find trends in the job like, then we share that with all the administrators too, so that they can get that information. Thankfully, Amanda and I attend a lot of those release times, so we do get that immediate feedback. Which is good.
The phrase I always heard was like, similar to what you just said, you're drowning in data but thirsting for knowledge.
Similar ideas for sure.
And the thing that I'd like to see is, let's say the next curriculum subcommittee meeting, I'd like to hear your reasoning process and how you would make a report of this to parents. Because if you ask me right now exactly what would I send home to parents right now, I need a little time to work on that one, so it's meaningful to them. And the second one is, if I'm a teacher in 5th grade, and maybe my building's not doing as well as another building is, but I still teach adding fractions and converting fractions to decimals or whatever. Somewhere in there, I've got to know the specific area that my kids were weak on was converting
Right.
0.50 to 50%, and not just decimals to fractions. And I'm curious as to how we go about that.
There are some, so one of the shots screenshots we showed you, so this is just one report that Paul had mentioned. There are very detailed and specific reports that we can run for 5th grade at Frederick, for a specific 5th grade teacher at Frederick, and then for a specific 5th grade student at Frederick, that give us some very, very clear feedback on where they are, what kind of information for the individual students is ready to be introduced, and what needs some extra support and reinforcement. And then the teacher can look at that same information for their class and say, my students really need help with converting fractions to decimals or decimals. And then as a whole grade, we can look at that same report on a larger scale. So we can definitely show you some of those types of reports at the next curriculum committee. They're very detailed. They're very helpful in planning for instruction.
We could keep going on and on about all these
Oh,
topics. But right at the end of the map window, for example, Amanda put together a really tremendous presentation PowerPoint packet of how you access all the reports in MAP, what do you do with all the reports in MAP, what you can glean from all that information. She presented that to all the instructional coaches and all the info specialists. And so each of them have been then going into team meetings and working with each of the individual teachers' teams to review how to read all those reports and what they can glean from the resources that are available, just so they knew what it was there. And so those have been things that have been those that weren't releases, we didn't pull teachers to do those were embedded into their job or their team meetings during the school day. It's always just in time training, because if we did the training too early and it wasn't their data, their teachers typically don't pay close attention. But if you wait too long and they already have their data, then it's too late. So we had to maneuver a little bit about when the perfect timing for all those things. So Amanda's been working. She actually went to some of the buildings to help with those as well. That's an area that really Amanda shines with.
I would say as a parent, what I find more useful is just looking at their grades on individual campus. And as a psychometrician, I wouldn't look at this data at all. And just knowing the criticism and then the math, and they can't even answer for themselves, and how they are, there's such a huge difference between how people are performing on the NEEP, National Assessment for Education Progress exam, and how people are scoring on math. So it really worries me that we are using math too much. And from what I'm understanding from people who are at the state level working on this, is that, you know, Paul Zabakowski specifically, who's going to come to speak to our curriculum and assessment evaluation committee, is that we can't necessarily trust these data, and it's very low level of skill. So, I mean,
You have to look at it
yes,
for what it is.
my kids don't know their operations, but those where the conversations are happening, we're looking at their actual assignments that they're getting in class. That to me is really gonna give parents more information than what a standardized test is going to give them. And it worries me that the teachers are using this so often to inform their instruction, and it might take the place of actual curriculum and observation that needs to be happening, and parent partnerships that need to be happening. Their time is being taken away to do this.
I would just say it's a data piece, but we have lots of other pieces too.
Right.
So we're not.
But when I'm hearing that, I mean, it just seems like, and maybe I'm wrong, but it seems like this is what's driving instruction in our district, and it's happening, that
It is
there
a
are free
piece.
sessions happening. It seems like though, that it's, I mean, if they're looking at all the strands, and I mean, this is what I'm told that people actually shouldn't be doing. So, I'm sorry, it's new, there are other districts that are like getting away from math. It's a conversation that is gonna be hard for teachers to wean teachers off of math, but I'm hoping that ESSA gives us more flexibility to not necessarily have to keep using, standardized tests to inform our instruction.
You did mention NAEP. Amanda's also working on, we have been identified that we'll have 2 schools who are participating in NAEP. I think it's
4th grade at Meadowview and 8th grade here at middle school.
in February, like 16th or something. So something.
February, I think Meadowview was identified as February 6th, and middle school was February 18th.
So we have 2 schools that have been asked to participate. The challenge, the opportunity for that is that we won't get any individual reports and we don't get any district reports back. We are just submitting data into the big pool. It's a part of the pool.
So,
Well,
sorry, there was just, all I wanna say is, good instruction, so when No Child Left Behind happened, good instruction was good instruction. So, we didn't let this it happened, right? And our kids still did well. And so it just worries me that we've moved so far in one direction when we have an opportunity to kind of wean ourselves a little bit.
I think our teachers are looking very, very, very predominantly at formative assessment, short cycle assessment, district benchmark assessments, directly connected to our curriculum. I think that's what the majority of their instruction. I see one of our instructional coaches nodding very clearly that those are the things that teachers talk about every week.
I would like to see more of that than this.
Well, you have to have some sort of outside measure of how you're doing.
I agree.
But if there's 5 math items or any other items that you're not doing so well on, you still look at it, well, I really don't care if they're not doing so well on number 4.
Right.
You make those decisions.
Those are
And it
professional.
goes back to what you say, this is our curriculum.
Right.
But you've got to have some outside measure of what's going on, otherwise everybody says everything's fine. Okay.
Right, but they have PARC, they have 3 math assessments. I'm just saying, just free the teachers up and we only need 1 litmus test, right? It seems, or is it ESSA is requiring us to do math 3 times?
We'll continue the conversation. The challenge is that we have conflicting requirements
So
for
they're
the
saying
state
we need
assessment.
standardized.
The state evaluation system requires us to have a system like MAP. So it could be something else, but it is one of the options
So
that we
you
have
don't
to
have a
develop.
standardized, like, how many administrations?
Right.
Sorry, this is our curriculum.
Beginning, we have to have at least 2 for that. So we thank you for your time to share about assessment information here in the district.
That was a good discussion. Thank you very much. Board reports, if anyone has anything they want to share.
We had a assessment evaluation curriculum committee meeting, this last Thursday. Just general outline, class, late start, job alike, meeting was quite successful, I'm hearing, and let's see.
It's getting darker here.
We stayed in buildings, job alike groups worked together well, and the elementary art finished their school sequence, I'm told, which is great. We learned about thinking maps, which is fascinating. everything from Venn diagrams to all kinds of variations on that that you could think of for kids to convey visually what they're learning and how they want to convey information. There are some training on that, the 15th of November and the 16th, 24th and the 25th of January, and the 26th of February. I can go to one or two of those just to see what they're all about. So if you've got time sometime, I think it's worth looking at. What I really like about it is would be that if no matter what building I go to, I'm exposed to this, and so if I meet with other kids or whatever, I could write a paper, I could do something with math or science and communicate that way. Again, technology, brought up to speed as we have this philosophy of 1-to-1 grades 3 up and 2-to-1 K-2 at this point. I learned something I didn't know about curriculum changes and modifications. I was used to the old way of being a high school person that every 5 or 6 years you had a big meeting and we had to readopt math or get a new math adoption or social studies or whatever. I found out that every 2 or 3 years we update what we're doing with whatever program we have, Carnegie Envision or whatever, and we go from there. So it's a little different situation, which is kind of nice. You don't have to be totally tied into something for 5 or 6 years, but there's a lot more to it than that. But that was fascinating to me. Well, those are the main things. Where I think you're all learning or seeing that there's a tremendous amount of detail when you're really dealing with testing and measurement and curriculum. They all have to fit together. And what they gave us tonight is just the beginning of it. And they're really digging into that. That's the important thing I'm a classroom teacher. I want to know, what am I doing that makes sense and how are my kids responding? And then I still make decisions. Am I really concerned my kids didn't do as well on this item as they did on that item or whatever area? That goes back to your curriculum that you decided this stuff is important and this stuff is not quite as important as that. But and then I'm also, again, interested, I think the next curriculum meeting we have, the committee, all of you just say, okay, we went through as to how we're going to report to the parents right now, which is always going to be in flex because how much information do you give to parents that have varying educational backgrounds and varying interests as to detail. And also if I'm say I'm a 5th grade teacher and I've got 1 or 2 years of experience, what do you actually give me that I can build on, learn from, to alter my curriculum in a one way or the other, or maybe not at all? And what? By the way, my impression remains that there's some very good things going on in curriculum in this district.
To
Thank you.
add to curriculum and curriculum assessment and evaluation. So Ellen and I have set aside the date of December 5th to have Paul Zevakowski come and just speak. And it's really just to inform us about his experience. And he's a part of the P20 Council. On their assessment committee, there's probably 50 people on the assessment committee, but he's one of those people. And he's in talks with just high-level people at CPS regarding map testing. And so just based on I work with Paul, full disclosure, just based on my experience of what I've been learning from him for the past 3 years, I would say it's worth our effort if we can make it to attend his session. He can't make it to our morning meeting, which, so we've moved it to the night of the 5th before a board meeting. Again, I was hoping that people could come and at least see him speak and present. And I would say if anyone has any questions, I can share some of his, there are some videos online that I can share of some of the presentations that he's given. I actually sent something to Tom earlier. Actually, the one I sent to Tom earlier is a neat video. It's about 2 hours long, but it's showing why are the scores in Chicago growing so much faster than any other district in the country. And really, they were saying Principal Janice Jackson spoke from CPS, and everybody on their panel had 2 minutes to speak, and she said school leadership development and using data effectively. Those were the 2 huge things. So I'm going to share some of that with you, and I will encourage anyone to ask questions, because it's a couple of months off, so if Paul can incorporate any of your questions into his presentation, we can do that. So, not we, he can do that, but I'm the one making the arrangements, so.
Okay. Thank you.
And so more details to come, because it'll be a posted meeting,
Yeah.
That's December 5th, right?
December 5th, yeah.
Early.
Okay. Thank you. Any other comments from anyone for board info? Superintendent report?
So Mrs. Corral just asked me to update where we were. My friend Tom here took away some of the things I was going to talk about. And so last week we did have our second late start of the year. It was actually our first time that the Java Lights were able to meet together across the district for during the late start. So they always get a lot of work done. Ellen and I have continued last year's tradition of having a video that we make prior to it, so that all the groups, no matter where they're meeting. Last year it was called the Fireside Chat, and this year it's called Messages from Base Camp, because of our theme of reaching new heights together. And so we're talking about climbing mountains, reaching new heights, and so we have Messages from Base Camp. One of the things that we're in the middle of right now, and just because I get to share assistant superintendent report, we are in the middle, as Tom shared, we're gathering information from teachers because we have a number of contracts that are coming due at the end of the school year. So some of those contracts, as Tom shared, is the Envisions Math and Carnegie Math and STEM scopes. And then the other one that we are gathering information about is something we talked about here at the board table, is about the state's change in the requirement for us to return to teaching cursive. And so we have, Amanda and I put together surveys, so every grade level team across the district have been responding, so we have feedback from everybody before our smaller groups of teachers will be able to analyze that data and decide what the next steps. Remembering that Envisions and STEM scopes and Carnegie are really a resource to help us with our curriculum. Our curriculum is really our identified targets, our identified standards about what we want all kids to know and be able to do, and these are all just resources to help us. So we're in the beginning process. I just wanted to share with the board that we're gathering all teacher feedback about those topics before we move forward with any kind of decision or plan for what to do next. So I think those are really important to share.
Okay. Thank you.
Adding to my previous board report, I also, just remembering that my daughter tells me I focus too much on improvement and not enough on what is going right. So to piggyback off of Tom, I want to thank everybody for the awesome job that you're doing with curriculum.
Thank you. I think we've already hit the curriculum committee, right? Basically.
Mm-hmm.
Diversity committee, do they have a meeting?
We have a meeting, next week is our next meeting.
November 7th.
No.
Yeah.
November 7th, October 25th.
Okay, never mind.
Pretty sure it's next.
It's coming up.
Yeah, it's
That's
coming
what
up.
you're saying.
Good, in the future.
Let's move on to the consent agenda. If I could have a motion to approve the consent agenda, including the addendum to the personnel report.
So moved.
Second. Parkinson? Aye. LaCroy?
Aye.
Strack?
Aye.
Mesco?
Aye.
Mack?
Aye.
Weedman?
Aye.
No.
Oh, you were asleep. We have a whole bunch of motions for action items. These are related, I think, entirely to the new evidence-based funding and additions we're making as a result of that increased funding. First, if I could have a motion to approve the addition of one FTE nurse.
So moved. Second.
Any questions? Okay.
Weedman?
Aye.
Mesco?
Aye.
Mack?
Aye.
Parkinson? Aye. LaCroy?
Aye.
Strack?
Aye. Motion carries. Could I have a motion to approve the addition of one FTE social worker behavior specialist?
Move.
Second.
Any questions? Okay.
LaCroy? LaCroix,
Aye.
Strack,
Aye.
Parkinson.
Aye.
Mack,
Aye.
Weedman,
Aye.
Mesco.
Aye.
Motion carries. Could I have a motion to approve the addition of one-to-one technology for grades 3 through 8 at an approximate cost of $350,000?
So moved.
Any questions? Okay.
Strack,
Aye.
Mack,
Aye.
LaCroix,
Aye.
Parkinson.
Aye.
Mesco,
Aye.
Weedman.
Motion carries. Could I have a motion to approve the addition of an administrative assistant to the director of EL?
So moved. Second.
Any questions? Okay.
Mack,
Aye.
Strack,
Aye.
Parkinson,
Aye.
LaCroix,
Aye.
Weedman,
Aye.
Mesco.
Aye.
Motion carries. Could I have a motion to approve the addition of a jump-up program at Avon?
So moved.
Second.
Somebody, in a sentence or two, to refresh my memory of exactly what that is.
Looking at the backup we got from Ellen, it's the kids' assessment identified at Avon kindergartners who were not particularly ready for kindergarten.
Mhm.
This is primarily due to the no prior school experience, and this would address another one of the EVM gaps that were put out there. So it's going to be 4 half-days prior to the 1920 school year to get those kids ready to join school come day
Is there
one.
a need for that at the other buildings, or?
I think this was mostly for the EL students who have not had the opportunity to go to preschool.
Okay.
So part of that whole topic is that we, all of our kindergarten staff participate in an assessment called the Kids Assessment. And so when that data came back, there was a discrepancy from our data from Avon students compared to the other schools in the district, specifically in the idea that they had not had any school prior to coming to school. So even those 4 half-days, while it doesn't seem like much, it will certainly help kids become more familiar with the building and with expectations and understanding of what school is like. And it may also calm some nerves and so that we can get kids ready much quicker when the school year begins. Remember, the kids assessment is not an analysis of their long-term progress. It's really an indication of what do they bring to us prior to school. Amanda actually coordinates many of those things. I feel like Amanda's doing everything tonight, but she does.
Would you like me to read the synopsis after we do the motion? So that we
For this particular one?
or the rest of them, I have it in front of me
Oh,
as we go along.
yeah, I mean, if you want to, you can.
Did that answer the
Yep,
question?
sure does. Move the question.
Okay. Mesco,
Aye.
Parkinson,
Aye.
Strack,
Aye.
Mack,
Aye.
Weedman,
Aye.
LaCroix.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next, could I have a motion to approve the addition of supplemental literacy materials for EL?
Move.
Second.
This was the purchase of bilingual materials in the area of science and social science for the population of the EL students.
Mesco,
Aye.
Parkinson,
Aye.
Mack,
Aye.
Strack,
Aye.
Weedman,
Aye.
LaCroix.
Aye.
Motion carries. Could I have a motion to approve the addition of an assistant administrator of EL for the 2019-2020 school year using 1819 funds?
Move.
Second.
This position will, as we said, will be added in the 1920 school year. The addition of the position will provide additional support needed to the EL bilingual programs in all 7 schools. We're adding 1 position, and our current gap is 5.39 positions.
Weedman,
Aye.
Mesco,
Aye.
Mack,
Aye.
Parkinson,
Aye.
LaCroix,
Aye.
Strack.
Aye. Motion carries. Could I have a motion to approve the addition of an EL interventionist for the 2019-2020 school year using 1819 funds?
So moved.
Second.
This position will provide interventions for those students who are experiencing academic challenges, as well as native language challenges. Interventions will be provided in Spanish.
Yeah.
Read the right one?
Yes.
I think so.
Parkinson,
Aye.
Mack,
Aye.
Weedman,
Aye.
LaCroix,
Aye.
Mesco,
Aye.
Strack.
Aye. Motion carries. Could I have a motion to approve the addition of 2 instructional coaches for the 2019-2020 school year using 1819 funds?
Move.
Second.
This is, again, addressing one of those gaps. According to the EBF, we have a gap of 11.7 personnel in this area, so we're adding 2. And this will provide in-class support to all our teachers.
Parkinson? Aye. Mack?
Aye.
Weedman?
Aye.
Mesco?
Aye.
LaCroy?
Aye.
Strack?
Aye. Motion carries. And lastly, could I have a motion to approve the addition of district techs to assist with one-to-one needs?
So moved.
Second.
The question is, how many, I mean, that's wide open. How many we added?
Yeah, it was only, it was the 2.
That was supposed to be there.
Yeah,
And then the backup.
it's not in the backup either. It's just with the implementation of our one-to-one, we'll need some additional techs to support. So fall under the previous gap amount for tech.
Can we change the motion
We
to
have
say
to-
2?
Yeah.
Joe, that was supposed to be 2, right?
Yeah, just 2. We have 5. The 2 additional, put 1 in every building.
Okay. You want to amend your motion to?
I move to amend the motion to add 2 addition, or 2 district techs.
I'll second that.
Go ahead and read the roll for the vote on that.
All right, Weedman?
Aye.
Mesco?
Aye.
Mack?
Aye.
Parkinson? Aye. LaCroy?
Aye.
Strack?
Aye. And then on the amended motion to approve the addition of 2 district techs to assist with one-to-one needs.
So move.
Second.
Weedman?
Aye.
Mesco?
Aye.
Mack?
Aye.
Parkinson? Aye. LaCroy?
Aye.
Strack?
Aye. Motion carries. Unfinished business for Frederick Bus Project.
So to give just a brief update about that, they have completed construction on the east lot. Our engineering firm is going to be going out and doing some inspections just to make sure everything is up to snuff and everything is up to the code that we specified in our bid. So that should be done, and that should be done in the next week or so. The west lot will be re-seal coated and striped with a new pattern, hopefully, depending upon the rain this weekend. And then that would initiate for Monday for a whole new traffic pattern for parents at Frederick. So instead of going through the circle lot, they'll start going through that large west lot. We'll have a lot of staff on hand that for the first couple of days just to help parents be aware of the change. We've made them aware already. It's just a little tentative with the alerts just because if it rains in a weekend, which it has several weekends already, obviously they can't go out and seal coat. So the 30% chance for rain this weekend, we're hoping is more like the 70% sunny skies, but we'll see. But everything's on schedule for this weekend, and we should be completely done with the project in the next week or 2.
Okay.
Yeah, I've observed it a couple of times, and there's plenty of spaces in between the buses. The principal and I were talking about, we gotta make sure in the wintertime when the snow piles up, make sure they got room to make the left turn there.
Yeah.
And everybody's aware of that. And the other thing is that Eric's, the principal's diagram that he sent out for the parent newsletter was excellent. But as is typical, the kids will learn pretty quickly how to get on the bus all right. The parents will take longer to learn how to ride.
Yeah.
They're still lining up on Frederick, so that will have to change somehow. Just read what the principal emailed you, that's all you have to do. Okay,
I said it's a person, it's an adult problem, right?
there you go.
Okay.
It's what it is.
Solar project.
So the project is moving along quite nicely. Prairie View is essentially complete. They're just basically cleaning up any odds and ends on the site. So that's going to be basically our first one that's been completely completed. Park East, they're doing some last minute wrap-ups for some different communication pieces there, a weather station and things like that being installed. The official flip switch date, so to speak, is October 27th. It would have happened sooner, but apparently there's a play on October 20th, so we had to push it back a week so the students could still have their play. So October 27th is when that site will go live, At that point, we'll have Frederick and Park both live. The only thing we still have pending for the Frederick school at this point is a fence along the east side. As we've mentioned in previous board meetings, there was just some questions about the floodplain and different things with the fencing for that and timing of it. So that should be installed hopefully this week. And then the last piece is the middle school. They actually had somebody out this morning already to start doing some basic setup for the work. And if you've seen out in the parking lot, there's already some pallets that are starting to show up. So they should be starting that literally any day now.
Okay.
How long do you think it'll take for them to do this one?
They are tentatively shooting for December, but we'll see.
See what Mother Nature brings.
Exactly.
John, when are we gonna start getting any performance reports from performance service on energy savings, that kind of thing?
I have a meeting with their salesperson in the next 2 weeks. We're still trying to finalize a date for that, just because there's certain pieces of it that I wasn't aware of when I first got here. So I'm still trying to figure out how that works. I know that they've met with Joe for how the system is set up and communicated, but we're still trying to figure that piece out. So hopefully soon, but I don't want to. I'll as soon as I know, I'll let you know.
But we have been producing energy in some of them that we've connected to, and that's been positive.
Correct. That Prairie View is the one site that's live right now, and that one there's already, so to speak, it's drawing power from that field whenever it's a sunny day. So we should be seeing savings, at least for the Prairie View site, in the next month or so on the bills. But,
Parallel track then, so one of the things that we talked about when we first started talking about the project was the possibility of doing a little curriculum work around the photovoltaic cells and everything. Is there anything planned or anything?
So they're trying to get the project finished, and then that's going to be our next step. We've been had some communication that that's something we want, and specifically our park and GMS teachers are anxious because they think that their students will understand it at a little bit more sophisticated level, but the younger schools too will be glad to get some information about it too.
Well, you said you were at the weather station. Is that all part of that project too, the weather station that you were just talking about?
yes, and I know that Performance Services actually specifically works with a curriculum development company, I believe called the NEED Project, and they work to develop curriculum based around specifically our specific site and all the things that went into our specific site. So they should be reaching out in the next week or two, is my understanding, to give us some information about curriculum and other ideas.
Would we have an opportunity to take a tour of some of these, see where it's connecting and see what it looks like now that it's installed? I mean, I know we saw the pictures and everything, but I'd be interested just to see, I'm not gonna climb on the roof or
The
anything.
groundbreaking
Why
one.
not?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I hear there's a science Olympiad coach at GMS who's gonna be teaching circuits, and he may be using that somehow in his instruction.
I wonder who that might be.
Thank you. We do not have any new business. Topics for future agenda items?
Currently, I have a wonderful presentation from the ECAT team, and we apologize that was scheduled tentatively for tonight and it got missed off the agenda. So the ECAT is the Early Childhood Assessment Team, and you have done wonders for that team to add some additional staff and some additional supports to that team, and they want to share what they've learned and what they're working on and what it's like. So that's on the plan for the next time. That's all I have on my list right now.
Okay.
You know,
So that'll be a
you know
5-minute
what
meeting.
he's talking about there, Kathleen sends me things every now and then that are really fascinating things to read in education, and they talk about adding calculus, whatever. You don't just add calculus. You've got to do what ECAT does, and you start down there, then you get the kids off to a good run in math, and then they might eventually be in a position to take calculus 12 years later. You don't just add calculus at the high school. It doesn't start there. There, that's my speech.
I didn't know when I fit in there, I'm trying to say, connect.
Well, I talk about ECAT, that tied into what you do with the little kids.
Will you be doing the levy for next meeting? Or?
Yes, so we'll have a levy to be presented at the next meeting for approval at the following meeting.
Okay. Public comments? Hi, could you use a microphone, please?
My name is Kathy Diamede, and I'm a parent. I have two sons at Park School. One has a life-threatening allergies. He has life-threatening allergies. For the past 5 years, I've sat on the allergy committee, and I took part with administrations, the school nurses, and other parents, and just really trying to change policy to keep our children safer. It became clear while sitting on the allergy committee that the health needs in our district have really changed in the past 5 years drastically, and there is a critical need for more registered nurses in our schools. So thank you for the approval tonight for one more. Our district currently, we have 2 registered nurses. They're working between 7 schools or 3,484 students with a ratio of 1 registered nurse per 1,742 students. The American Academy of Pediatrics endorses a ratio of 1 to 75. So does the state of Illinois school funding formula, the evidence-based funding, sets a ratio of 1 nurse per 1 registered nurse per 750 students. Park alone has 825 students in the enrollment. When one of the registered nurses that we have currently on staff is not at Park, high serious medical conditions are left in place in the care of unlicensed health clerks. Yes, they receive CPR and first aid training. However, their medical knowledge, their experience does not go further than that, and it's a concern that they're unable to make quick life-saving decisions for our students and assist them further in a medical need. Also, in the event that there is an emergency at Park School, a registered nurse has to drive across town, cross over 2 railroad tracks, which we all know the situation, they're fixed now, but who knows what the future holds, in order to come to Park to aid professionally and assist further in the emergency. So we respectfully ask, you've already approved 1, we'd like more registered nurses to be hired and align our district better with the recommended recommendations. And furthermore, we ask for a full-time registered nurse staffed at Park School daily. Thank you for your time, and thank you for all you do to keep our children safe and healthy.
Thank you.
I'm going to talk on behalf of 2 people, myself and someone who couldn't be here. My name is Becky Swigert. I have 3 children at Park. One has also life-threatening food allergies, and I was beneficial in starting the allergy committee 5 years ago. So thank you for allowing that committee to continue. I feel like we have grown a lot in the last 5 years. We have also helped with the wellness committee now, adding guidance. I feel as parents in the district, we're always willing to share our knowledge that we've learned, something that was given to us through our children, something we had to research and learn as we had our kids. So something I looked up on my own was that in 2011, a study had showed that school nurses in the building saves principals, teachers, and clerical staff a considerable amount of time and money addressing health concerns. The data shows that it saves principals almost an hour a day, teachers almost 20 minutes a day, and clerical staff 45 minutes a day. That would be about 13 hours a day in aggregate for school personnel. The health clerks not only are the health clerks for the schools, but they also have administrative duties on their desks. So they are multitasking. If any of you have ever been in Park School, even just to walk in for one quick moment, you see a revolving door of kids come in from it. I scratched my hand, I hurt my knee, whatever it may be, fell on the playground, and I don't know how they get any other job besides attending to children's health needs in there, let alone having something life-threatening or further involved. So I'm on a side note. Another parent at Park, Kristen Nelson, this is what I'm reading verbatim what she's written me. I have a daughter in 1st grade at Park. My daughter is a type 1 diabetic and needs constant monitoring throughout the day. She doesn't have an insulin pump or a CGM. Those devices are a luxury, and they aren't able to afford that. At the beginning of the school year meeting, I met with the district nurses and was concerned with our health clerk's knowledge on type 1 diabetes. Our health clerk at Park was new this year. She didn't seem comfortable with giving injections and made a few comments that had me worried. I spoke with the district nursing staff, and the matter was handled very professionally.
As a mother of a child with a chronic condition, I can't tell you how much sleep I have lost over the first month of school. The wrong dose of insulin could literally kill my daughter. The thought of an untrained person giving my daughter insulin made me physically ill. So district nurses stayed at the school for the first 2 weeks until our health clerk was properly trained, and I gave her the quote-unquote okay for her to administer insulin on her own. Sorry, I lost my check. Also, who lost resources for the district nurse those first 2 weeks? Also, my daughter is losing out on precious class time going to the office for her blood sugar checks. If the health clerk has a question, she has to call me. When that happens, my daughter sits and waits in the office until they have an answer. What happens if there's an emergency and my daughter passes out from low blood sugar? I'm not sure if a health clerk would know what to do. What happens when a child with a feeding tube that falls out at recess? Would the health clerk know what to do and how to replace it? What happens when a child hit his or her head at recess? Is a health clerk trained on concussion protocol? Does a health clerk know how to use an EpiPen? Does a health clerk have the same compassion and empathy a nurse does when it comes to sensitive issues such as puberty? There is so much more a school nurse does than fix the scratches. They are highly trained medical professionals that are the first response to children's medical needs. I've been told that if there's an emergency, the health clerk will call one of the district nurses. I'm not okay with that. What if a child is having an asthma attack? Every second counts. Today, there are more chronic conditions in mainstreaming than ever before. So many kids need physical and mental health. What if a child with autism comes in with a gash on his head? Will the health clerk know how to fix the wound and also control unpredictable behavior that comes along with it? Park School is a K-8 campus. That's a lot of kids for one clerk to help. She is spread too thin and also to learn so many important medical techniques nurses went to school to learn. Please consider hiring more nurses for not only Park School, but for the district as well. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Okay, we do need a brief closed session. John has a little more information for us regarding negotiations. So if I could have a motion to enter into closed session pursuant to the sections of the Open Meetings Act listed in the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
LaCroix,
Aye.
Parkinson,
Aye.
Mesco,
Aye.
Mack,
Aye.
Strack,
Aye.
Weedman.